The storm came without mercy. Northern Maine had seen bad winters before, but February 2026 brought something different. Something that pressed down on the land like a fist closing around bone. The kind of cold that didn't just bite it erased. Trees bent under white weight until branches snapped like rifle shots in the distance. Wind carved through the forest in waves, each gust stealing another degree of warmth from anything foolish enough to be caught outside. Declan Rourke had chosen this place precisely because it asked nothing of him. At 39, he lived alone in a weather-beaten cabin, tucked 15 miles from the Canadian border, far beyond maintained roads, and farther still from questions people might ask. His body still carried the shape of a soldier, lean and muscular, built for endurance rather than display. But 5 years of solitude had softened the sharp edges. His face was angular jaw squared and shadowed by a short beard that had gone prematurely gray at the temples. Pale eyes watchful and careful, the kind that never fully rested even when sleep finally came. He moved through the clearing outside his cabin with practiced efficiency, splitting logs with an axe that felt lighter than it should. Each swing was precise, economical. No wasted motion. Old habits died hard even when there was no one left to impress with discipline. The radio inside crackled with another weather warning. Blizzard conditions expected to worsen through the night. Wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour. Visibility near zero. Travel not recommended. Declan barely registered the words. He had survived worse places than Maine, or so he told himself every morning when he woke to silence that felt more like accusation than peace. Behind him through the cabin's frost-covered window, Timber watched. The German Shepherd was 6 years old, large, even for his breed, with a thick sable and black coat marked by a faint scar along one flank. The injury had come from shrapnel in a combat zone neither of them talked about anymore. His amber eyes held the steady intelligence of a working dog who had spent years beside men who relied on him to sense danger before it had a name. Timber's ears lifted slightly, not alarm yet, just attention shifting towards something beyond the immediate perimeter. Declan noticed immediately. He always did. He set the axe down and turned toward the tree line, scanning automatically for movement, for shapes that didn't belong. Nothing visible. Just snow beginning to fall, harder flakes moving sideways now, instead of straight down. The wind was changing direction. Inside the cabin, Declan secured shutters over windows reinforced years ago against exactly this kind of weather. He checked the generator, stacked firewood close enough to reach without stepping outside again. Inventoried supplies with the same methodical calm he once used to prep for missions overseas. Some instincts never left. Planning for worst-case scenarios had kept him alive when optimism killed better men. Timber remained near the door posture, shifting subtly. His breathing had slowed, his gaze fixed on something Declan couldn't see yet. Then the dog stood, fully, muscles tensing beneath thick fur. Not barking, not whining, just turning back once to fix Declan with a look that allowed no delay. That look triggered something buried deep in Declan's chest. A quiet shift. The civilian stillness he had wrapped around himself like armor gave way to something older, something operational. He didn't question it, didn't hesitate. Declan pulled on his heavy coat, grabbed a tactical flashlight from the shelf-coiled rope over one shoulder, and opened the door into a blast of white that stole his breath. The cold struck like a physical blow, immediate and total, the kind of cold that bypassed skin and went straight for bone. Snow swirled in chaotic patterns, wind howling through the trees with a sound like distant screaming. Timber moved ahead without waiting for a command. Head low, paws cutting through drifts with disciplined efficiency. He knew where he was going. Declan followed every step deliberate, aware that disorientation killed faster than exposure out here. The forest closed around them quickly, visibility dropping to less than 10 feet. He kept Timber's dark shape in sight, trusting the dog's instincts more than his own eyes. They moved deeper into the trees where the wind twisted strangely between trunks, creating pockets of relative calm, followed by sudden violent gusts. Snow had drifted high in places nearly waist deep. Declan's legs burned with the effort of pushing through. 400 yards from the cabin, Timber slowed. His body angled protectively, ears flat against his skull. A low growl rumbled in his chest, not directed at Declan, but at something ahead. Declan swept the flashlight upward, and the beam caught something that made him freeze despite years of conditioning. Two figures hung from a thick branch of an ancient pine tree, suspended by ropes bound around their wrists. Their boots hovered inches above the snow, bodies slack, uniforms stiff with ice. They were women, police officers. The dark blue fabric was torn and dirt-stained insignia, barely visible beneath accumulated frost. This was no accident. This was design. Declan scanned the tree line, instinctively noting the absence of struggle marks in the snow below them, the careful placement of the ropes. the way they had been positioned to ensure maximum exposure to wind and cold. Winter had been meant to finish the job. Clean and quiet, no witnesses, no evidence beyond what the storm would erase. He moved closer, snow crunching under his boots. Up close, he could see they were still alive. Barely. The taller woman was broad-shouldered, her build shaped by physical strength rather than softness. Blonde hair, once pulled into a tight, practical braid, now hung loose and frozen against pale skin, already showing the mottled discoloration of severe hypothermia. Her face was marked by exhaustion rather than fear, jaw still clenched even in near unconsciousness. The other woman was smaller, leaner, with sharper features and dark hair plastered to her cheeks in icy strands. Her skin was fair, drawn tight across angular bones. Her breaths came quicker, but shallower visible, as faint puffs in the flashlight beam. Declan would learn their names later. Detective Sloan Mercer, Officer Bryn Haskell. But in that moment, they were simply lives measured in seconds. Timber moved beneath them, positioning his body as if he could anchor them by presence alone, heat radiating from his coat in the frigid air. Declan acted without hesitation. Whatever he had come here to escape no longer mattered. The past he had tried to outrun by choosing isolation, the guilt he carried like a second skin, all of it fell away in the face of immediate necessity. He assessed quickly. Weight distribution, rope tension, order of operations. The taller woman's breathing was more irregular, more critical. She would not last long. Declan braced himself beneath her fingers, already numb, but moving with precision born from years of practice. He cut the rope with a controlled motion, guiding her descent until her boots touched snow and her full weight sagged into his arms. She was heavy with cold muscles, slack breath so faint it brushed his neck like a question rather than proof of life. He lowered her onto an insulated pad he had pulled from his pack, shielding her from the ground's killing cold. Timber pressed close, immediately working without command, radiating heat against her side. Declan repeated the process with the second woman adjusting for her lighter frame, steadying her descent with one hand while the rope played out through the other. As he wrapped them both in thermal layers pulled from his pack, something settled inside him. Not fear, not anger, recognition. This was the moment he had tried to outrun by choosing isolation. The moment where turning away would define him more completely than any battle he had fought overseas. The storm had not called him here by chance. It had demanded a choice. Declan Rourke made it without looking back. The return to the cabin began without ceremony. Only necessity. Declan moved first, carving a narrow path through drifts that had already begun to erase their outbound tracks. He secured the taller woman Sloan across his shoulders using rope and a field carry he had learned in places where stopping meant death. Her body was heavy with cold muscles, completely slack. Breath so faint he had to concentrate to feel it against his neck. The smaller woman, Bryn, stayed on her feet, but barely. Declan looped rope around her waist and across his own shoulder, creating a tether that let her lean forward without falling. She moved like someone underwater, each step requiring conscious thought. Timber ranged ahead and back, his large frame moving with disciplined economy. At 6 years old, he no longer had the raw speed of youth, but he had something better: judgment. He chose each step carefully, conserving energy, testing footing, always positioning himself between the group and potential threats. The storm had thickened since they left. Snow moved horizontally now, erasing the world beyond arm's reach. Declan navigated by memory and instinct, following the slight downward slope of terrain he had walked 1,000 times. His knee began to ache. The old injury from that blast overseas, the one that had killed 2 men under his command while leaving him standing. The physical wound had healed. The other kind never did. He had come here to outrun that weight. Carrying it again felt strangely clarifying. Bryn stumbled, catching herself on the rope tether. Declan adjusted automatically, slowing his pace by fractions. She was trying to speak, lips moving, but wind stole the words. "Save your strength," Declan said, not looking back. "We're almost there." Almost was relative. Another quarter-mile through terrain that wanted to kill them. Timber stopped suddenly, ears swiveling. Declan froze, scanning the darkness. Nothing visible. But the dog's instincts were rarely wrong. After a long moment, Timber moved forward again, choosing a slightly different line through the trees. Whatever he had sensed, they were avoiding it now. The cabin emerged slowly from the white, its dark shape barely distinguishable from the surrounding forest, until they were nearly upon it. Relief tried to settle in Declan's chest, but he pushed it away. Relief dulled edges, made you sloppy. He maneuvered Sloan onto the porch first, lowering her carefully onto the planks before forcing the door open with his shoulder. Warmth rushed out, thin but precious. Inside, the space was tight and functional. A single large room with a sleeping loft, reinforced walls, a stone fireplace that radiated steady heat. Declan guided Bryn in next, seating her near the hearth, but not too close. Direct heat could kill someone in severe hypothermia as surely as the cold itself. Timber followed, shaking once to clear snow from his coat, then positioning himself between the women and the door. Body angled outward, ears alert. Guard duty came naturally to him. Declan worked with efficient movements that bordered on reverence. He stripped away frozen layers, replacing them with dry wool and thermal blankets. His hands moved steadily despite the cold that had seeped into his own bones. Check for frostbite, monitor breathing, assess core temperature by touch. Medical thermometers were useless below a certain threshold. Sloane's skin was ice-pale, lips tinged blue. Her fingers and toes showed the waxy appearance of severe frostbite. Second degree at least, maybe worse. Bryn was in slightly better condition, but not by much. She had retained some core warmth, probably because of her smaller size and faster metabolism, burning through reserves. Declan prepared warm water bottles, wrapping them in cloth before placing them carefully against their torsos. Not on extremities that could send cold blood rushing to the heart and cause cardiac arrest. He elevated Sloane's legs slightly, monitored her pulse. 48 beats per minute, dangerously slow. Bryn's awareness surfaced, first consciousness returning in stages. Her eyes opened gradually, unfocused at first, then sharpening as she cataloged her surroundings. She tried to speak, but her jaw trembled too violently. "Don't talk yet," Declan said quietly, holding a cup of lukewarm water to her lips. "Small sips. Let your body adjust." She drank carefully, coughing once, then met his eyes with a look that held questions, but also something else. Assessment. She was evaluating him even in her weakened state. Good instincts for a cop. Minutes passed. The only sounds were wind battering the cabin walls, the crackling fire, and Timber's steady breathing. Bryn managed words finally. "You saved us." "Found you," Declan corrected. "Timber found you." As if responding to his name, the dog's tail thumped once against the floor without his gaze leaving the door. "How long were we out there?" Bryn's voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "Can't say for certain. Based on your core temperature, at least 4 hours, maybe longer." Declan adjusted the blanket around her shoulders. "Another hour and you wouldn't have made it. Either of you." Bryn's face tightened, not with fear but with anger. The kind that came from understanding exactly how close they had come. "They left us to die," she said, each word deliberate. "Said the storm would clean it up. No bodies, no case." Declan said nothing, just continued working, checking Sloane's vitals again. "My partner," Bryn continued, nodding towards Sloane. Is she going to make it?" "Depends on the next few hours. Her core temp is lower. More frostbite damage." Declan met Bryn's eyes. "But she's strong. She's fighting it." Bryn closed her eyes briefly, something like relief crossing her face. Or maybe prayer. Hard to tell. "What's your name?" Declan asked. "Officer Bryn Haskell. That's Detective Sloane Mercer." She paused. "You military was." "Figured. The way you carry yourself. The gear placement in here." Her gaze swept the cabin's interior, taking in details even through exhaustion. "You expecting trouble?" "Always." It was the truth. The cabin had been built to endure more than weather. Reinforced walls, multiple exits, supplies staged for rapid evacuation. The habits of a man who had learned that preparation was the only reliable form of hope. Bryn tried to sit up straighter, winced, settled back. "We were investigating trafficking. Women disappearing along the Canadian border. 12 and 18 months, all fitting a pattern." Declan continued his work, but he was listening now with the full weight of his attention. "We found something," Bryn said. "Evidence. But someone inside the department—" She trailed off, jaw tightening. "Someone didn't want us to find it. That's why they left you out there." "Yeah," bitter anger edged her voice. "Make it look like we got lost in the storm. Tragic accident. 2 cops who should have known better." Declan moved to check Sloane again. Her breathing had stabilized slightly. Pulse still slow, but steadier. Small victories. "Before they grabbed us," Bryn said quietly, "I hid something." She reached down with trembling fingers, struggling with her boot. Declan helped her, pulling it off carefully. Bryn reached inside, feeling around the insole, then pulled out a small object wrapped in plastic. A memory card, no bigger than a thumbnail. "Photos," she said, "of the trucks, the routes, some faces." She held it out to him. "This is what they wanted to erase." Declan took it, studying the tiny piece of technology that had nearly cost 2 lives. Evidence small enough to hide. Important enough to kill for. There's a laptop, he said, nodding toward a desk in the corner. Old but functional. Can we? Not yet. You need to rest. Both of you. Looking at evidence won't matter if you don't survive the night. Bryn wanted to argue. He could see it in her face. But exhaustion won. Her eyes were already closing again, body demanding sleep it had been denied. Sloane stirred for the first time, a small movement barely noticeable. Her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. A soft sound escaped her throat. Not quite a word, not quite a moan. Declan leaned closer. Detective Mercer, you're safe. You're in a cabin. You're being treated for hypothermia. Don't try to move yet. Her eyes opened briefly, pale blue dulled by cold and exhaustion, but still sharp underneath. She looked at him for a long moment, trying to process. Then her gaze found Bryn sleeping nearby. Some of the tension left her body. Bryn, the word was barely audible. She's okay, warming up. You both are. Sloane's eyes closed again. Not unconsciousness this time, just acceptance. Trusting that for now someone else was handling things. Declan sat back, letting himself exhale fully for the first time since finding them. Timber moved closer, pressing against his leg. Solid, warm, present. Outside, the storm showed no signs of easing. Wind screamed around the cabin's corners. Snow piled higher against the walls. The kind of weather that could last hours or days. The kind that cut you off from everything. Which meant whoever had left those women out there to die thought the job was done, but they thought the storm would cover their tracks. Erase the evidence. Turn two inconvenient detectives into a tragic footnote. Declan rose and moved to the window, carefully shifting the shutter to peer out. Nothing but white darkness. But somewhere out there, people who had tried to commit murder were assuming they had succeeded. The question was what they would do when they realized they were wrong. He checked his weapons. AR-15 cleaned and loaded, Glock 19 on his hip, extra magazines staged at strategic points, escape routes mentally rehearsed. Old habits. Timber watched him with knowing eyes. The dog understood preparation for violence, had seen it before, had participated in it. Declan returned to the women, adjusting their blankets, checking vitals one more time. Bryn was sleeping deeply now, body finally allowing itself to believe safety was real. Sloane's breathing had evened out, color returning slowly to her face. Still critical but trending towards survival. He allowed himself a moment to simply sit, back against the wall where he could see both the door and his patients. Timber settled beside him close enough that Declan could rest one hand on the dog's shoulder. 5 years he had lived here. 5 years trying to convince himself that distance from responsibility was the same as peace. That choosing isolation meant choosing safety. That if he didn't lead anyone, he couldn't fail them. And in one night, 2 dying women and a blizzard had proven every assumption wrong. The war he thought he had left behind was not behind him at all. It had simply been waiting. Quieter. Closer. No less demanding. Sloane's words came back to him, that barely audible whisper. Bryn. In that single word, Declan heard what he had once felt for the men under his command. Responsibility. Connection. The weight of caring whether someone else lived or died. He had run from that weight, built a life specifically designed to avoid it. Now it sat sleeping 6 feet away, wrapped in thermal blankets, trusting him to keep them alive through the night. Timber's ears swiveled suddenly, alert. Declan was on his feet before conscious thought caught up. The dog was staring at the north wall, body tense, a low growl building in his chest. Outside, through the howling winds, something had changed. Declan moved to the perimeter cameras he had installed years ago. Hidden, battery-powered. Linked to a monitor that showed grainy black and white footage. 3 sets of headlights were moving slowly through the forest toward the cabin. Vehicles built for winter terrain, taking their time, confident in their approach. ETA, 8 minutes. Bryn's warning came back to him. Someone inside the department hadn't wanted them to find evidence. Someone with enough resources to send armed men into a blizzard. Someone who needed to confirm the job was finished. Declan's pulse didn't accelerate. That was training. The ability to look at incoming violence and feel nothing but cold calculation. He moved quickly but without panic, gathering additional weapons, positioning them within reach, checking sight lines from each window. Sloane stirred, consciousness returning. Her eyes opened more fully this time, awareness sharpening as she took in Declan's movements. What's happening? Her voice was stronger now, still rough but functional. Company coming. 3 vehicles. ETA 7 minutes. Sloane tried to sit up, managed it despite obvious pain. They're coming to finish it. That's my assessment. Bryn woke at the sound of voices, instantly alert despite exhaustion. Her training showed through. She assessed the situation in seconds, eyes moving from Declan to the weapons to the windows. How many? She asked. Can't tell from the cameras. At least 6, maybe more. Can we defend this? We can try, Mao. Sloane forced herself to stand using the wall for support. Her legs trembled, but held. Give me a weapon. Declan studied her. She could barely walk, fingers still showing frostbite damage. But her eyes were clear, determined. He handed her a Glock 19. You know how to use this? I'm a cop, yes. You're a cop who nearly froze to death 2 hours ago. Can you shoot straight? Sloane checked the magazine, racked the slide with practiced ease, despite her damaged fingers engaged the safety. Guess we'll find out. Bryn was already moving slower, but with the same determination. What do you need me to do? Declan laid it out quickly. Defensive positions, firing lanes, what to do if they breached the door. The escape tunnel he had built years ago, accessible through a hidden panel in the floor. If it goes bad, he said, meeting both their eyes, you run through the tunnel. There's a secondary cabin half a mile north. Supplies there, radio. What about you? Sloane asked. I'll buy you time. That's not a plan, that's suicide. That's covering your retreat. Sloane shook her head. We're not leaving you behind. We don't abandon people. Something in her voice, absolute conviction, made Declan pause. These women, still recovering from hypothermia, barely able to stand, were ready to fight rather than run. It reminded him of something he had forgotten during 5 years of isolation. Some people were worth the risk. Timber positioned himself near the door, not anxious but ready, waiting for commands that would come soon enough. Through the window, the headlights were closer now, moving with certainty toward the cabin. No hesitation. They knew exactly where they were going, which meant they had known about this cabin all along, known about Declan, planned for the possibility that he might interfere. This was not just about eliminating 2 detectives. This was about eliminating everyone who knew. Sloane chambered around. Bryn took position near a window with the rifle Declan handed her. All 3 of them spread out, creating crossfire each, watching a different approach. The vehicles stopped 100 yards out, engines idling, headlights cutting through the snow, dark shapes moving between the beams. Declan counted 5 visible, possibly more staying with the vehicles. They were not rushing in. Good tactics. Surrounding first, establishing perimeter. These were not amateur amateurs. They're military, Declan said quietly. Or were. Watch for coordinated movement. A long minute passed, wind howling, snow falling, the standoff extending. Then a voice cut through the storm, amplified by a megaphone. Declan Rourke, we know you're in there. Send out the detectives. Do that and you walk away from this. Sloane met his eyes across the room. Silent communication. They both knew that was a lie. Declan moved to the door, opened it just enough to shout back. How about you walk away instead? Forget you were here. I'll forget I saw you. A pause, then laughter. Cold, cruel. Not how this works, Rourke. You're former military. You know how this plays out. You're outnumbered, outgunned. Only one way this ends. Then why are we talking? Another pause. Longer this time. Because the voice said, we'd rather not kill a veteran if we don't have to. Professional courtesy. But those 2 cops in there with you? They're already dead. They just don't know it yet. Department wants them gone. Higher up than you can imagine. So here's the deal. You hand them over. We make it quick and clean. You get to keep living your quiet life out here. Nobody needs to know you were involved. Declan glanced at Sloane and Bryn. They were listening to every word, hearing exactly what they were worth to the people they had sworn to serve. What's your answer, Rourke? Declan closed the door without responding. Moved back to his position. They're going to come in hard now, he said. No more talking. Be ready. Sloane nodded. Bryn adjusted her grip on the rifle. Timber's muscles coiled. The first shot came 30 seconds later. Not aimed at the cabin, aimed above it. A warning, or maybe just establishing aggression. Then silence again. The worst kind. The kind before violence broke loose. Declan's mind moved through probabilities. 5 attackers minimum. Possibly 8. Unknown firepower. Professionals who had planned this. Against 3 defenders, 2 of them half-frozen in a dog. The math was not good. But Declan had survived bad math before. Sometimes survival was not about winning. It was about refusing to lose. He thought about the memory card in Bryn's boot. Evidence these men would kill to suppress. Evidence that meant something worth dying for. 5 years he had told himself he was done being responsible for other people's lives. Tonight the universe was calling him a liar. Through the window, shadows moved closer. Tactical approach, testing for weaknesses. Timber growled low, a sound more felt than heard. And Declan Rourke, who had chosen isolation to escape duty, found himself exactly where duty had always known he would end up. In the moment where choice collapsed into action, where running was no longer an option, where the only direction left was forward. He checked his weapon one last time. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, 3 people and a dog waited for the violence they all knew was coming. The cabin had held against weather for 5 years. Now it would find out if it could hold against men. The first real shot came through the north window. Not a warning this time. A 9mm round that punched through the shutter Declan had reinforced with steel plating, splintering wood, but losing velocity before embedding itself in the far wall. 6 inches from where Bryn had been standing 2 seconds earlier. She had dropped on instinct, military training overriding the exhaustion still dragging at her limbs. Declan returned fire immediately. 3 controlled bursts through the damaged shutter, aiming low, where shadows moved against the snow. Not trying for kills, trying to establish cost, trying to make them think twice about the next approach. A grunt of pain from outside. Someone hit, though probably not fatally. The shadows pulled back, regrouping. North side reinforced, Declan called out, moving to the east window. They'll probe west next. Sloane had positioned herself there, already Glock held in a 2-handed grip, despite fingers that still showed waxy discoloration from frostbite. Her hands trembled slightly, but when she aimed, the barrel stayed steady enough. Timber had moved to the center of the room, equidistant from all entry points, body coiled and ready. His amber eyes tracked sounds. Declan's ears could not separate from the wind. Outside, the attackers were doing exactly what Declan had predicted. Professional tactics, establishing firing positions, creating crossfire angles. These were not local thugs hired for intimidation. These were men who understood small unit operations, which meant whoever had sent them had resources, money, connections. Bryn crawled to Declan's position, staying low. How long can we hold? Depends on their ammunition and patience. Declan ejected his magazine, checked the rounds remaining reloaded. They have to be careful. They want it quiet. Sustained gunfight out here. Even in this weather, someone might notice eventually. Park rangers, border patrol. So they'll try to end it fast. That would be my play. As if confirming his assessment, a new sound cut through the storm. The metallic clink of something small hitting the porch. Declan recognized it instantly. Flash grenade. Cover your eyes, now. He squeezed his eyes shut, covering them with one arm. Even through closed lids and flesh, the detonation was bright enough to leave after images. The concussive boom rattled the cabin's windows. Before the echo faded, the front door exploded inward. 2 men rushed through the breach, moving with coordinated precision. The first one made it 3 steps before Timber launched himself across the room. 80 pounds of trained aggression hitting the attacker's center mass, jaws clamping down on his firing arm. The man screamed. His partner tried to swing his weapon toward the dog, but Sloane fired twice from her position. Both rounds hit torso. The man went down hard. Declan was already moving, closing the distance, while the first attacker struggled with Timber. A single strike to the temple with his rifle butt. The man collapsed. Timber released immediately, training overriding prey drive, and retreated to Declan's side. Blood on his muzzle. Alert but controlled. Good boy, Declan said quietly. Guard. The dog positioned himself between the downed attackers and the women watching for movement. Declan checked both men quickly. The one Sloane shot was dead or dying, blood pooling beneath him. The one Timber had taken down was unconscious, breathing, but out of the fight. He zip-tied the unconscious man's hands behind his back, searched him for weapons and identification. No wallet, no ID, but the radio clipped to his vest was still functional. Bryn had moved to secure the door as best she could, dragging a heavy trunk across the opening. It would not stop another assault, but it would slow one down. 3 outside still, Declan said, listening to the tactical frequency on the captured radio. Voices coordinating, reporting casualties, adjusting strategy. They're pulling back to reassess. Sloane's face was pale, drawn tight with pain and shock. She had just killed a man, possibly her first. The training kept her functional, but the cost showed in her eyes. You did what you had to, Declan said, meeting her gaze. He would have killed all of us. She nodded stiffly, did not speak, saving words for when they might matter more than silence. The radio crackled. A different voice this time. Older, carrying authority. Rourke, you just made this personal. Those were good men, expensive men. Someone's going to pay for that. Declan picked up the radio, keyed the transmit button. You sent them to die? That's on you. We sent them to do a job. A simple job. Two cops who couldn't leave well enough alone. But you had to play hero. Now we've got bodies. Complications. Walk away. Take your people and go. I've got evidence cached in 3 locations. Anything happens to us, it goes to the FBI, the press, and the Attorney General. Your operation is over either way. A long pause. Declan could almost hear the calculation happening on the other end. You're bluffing. Test me. Another pause. Then the voice changed tone. Colder. More final. You don't know who you're dealing with, Rourke. This goes higher than you can imagine. Federal protection. Political cover. You think some cached evidence matters? We've buried deeper problems than 2 dead cops in a SEAL with PTSD. The transmission ended. Bryn had been listening, her face growing harder with each word. They're not leaving. No. They're going to kill us, all of us, and make it look like we never existed. Declan did not disagree. He moved to the unconscious attacker, grabbed him by the vest, dragged him away from the door. The man was starting to come around, groaning, eyes unfocused. Wake up, Declan said, not gently. The man's eyes focused gradually. Fear registered when he saw Declan's face. Then defiance. I'm not telling you anything. Your friends just left you behind. You heard them on the radio. They're writing you off as acceptable losses. You really want to die protecting people who won't even collect your body. The man's jaw tightened, but doubt flickered in his eyes. Sloane moved closer, lowering herself carefully to his eye level. What's your name? Doesn't matter. It matters to me. I just killed your partner. I'd like to know who I'm talking to. The directness seemed to catch him off guard. He studied her face, saw something there that made him reconsider. Jace, he said finally. Jace Kowalski. Former military. Jace, a slight nod. Marine Corps, 2 tours, honorable discharge. So what are you doing working for people who murder cops? Jace's face twisted. It's not like that. We were told you 2 were dirty, that you were interfering with a federal investigation, that taking you out was sanctioned. By who? I don't know names. I'm 3rd-tier contractor. I get a location, a target description, a payment, that's it. Bryn knelt down now too, despite the pain it cost her. But you know who hired your company. Jace hesitated, loyalties warring with survival instinct. Sloane's voice softened slightly. Jace, listen to me. We're not dirty cops. We were investigating a trafficking ring. 12 women missing, maybe more. Young women. Disappeared along the Canadian border. Someone with authority wanted us to stop looking. Someone with enough power to hire your team, enough power to make local police look the other way. Something shifted in Jace's expression. Not quite belief, but consideration. Who signed the contract? Declan pressed. You might not know names, but you know rank. You know chain of command. Jace swallowed hard. Sheriff, your sheriff, Clayton Roth. He coordinates through some lieutenant. Vaughn, I think. She handles logistics. The words hit Sloane like a physical blow. Her face drained of color. Bryn caught her arm, steadying her. You know this sheriff. Sloane could barely speak. He trained me 6 years ago when I made detective. He's been a mentor. I trusted him. The betrayal was written across every line of her face. Not just professional, personal, the kind that cut deep and stayed. Declan had seen that look before, on the faces of soldiers who learned their commanding officer had sold them out. It was a wound that did not heal cleanly. He gave Sloane a moment, then continued questioning Jace. How many in your team total? 8 originally, 2 dead now. 6 still operational, all contractors. Yeah, a mix of former military and private security. Good guys mostly, just trying to make a living. By murdering cops. Jace flinched. We were told it was legal. Black ops legal, but still sanctioned. Does that help you sleep at night? No answer. Declan stood paced to the window. The attackers had pulled back farther now, regrouping beyond effective rifle range. Lights still visible, but stationary. They were planning something. Probably waiting for reinforcements or better equipment. He turned back to Jace. What's the extraction plan? How are they getting out of here after the job's done? Helicopter, military, surplus Black Hawk, pilots on standby 20 miles south. So they've got air support. For extraction only, he won't engage. Just pick up. That was something at least. No gunships strafing the cabin. But it also meant the attackers had a guaranteed way out once they finished the job. Bryn was studying the memory card she had pulled from her boot earlier. We need to get this evidence out. Even if we don't survive, someone needs to see what's on here. The laptop, Declan said, nodding toward the desk. It's old, but it has satellite internet. Slow but functional. Sloane moved to the desk despite her injuries powered up the machine. It took 2 minutes to boot an eternity in the digital age. But finally the desktop appeared. Bryn inserted the memory card with trembling fingers. Files populated the screen. Dozens of them. Photos, documents, scanned permits. Bryn opened the first image. A modified truck, large cargo area with false walls, GPS coordinates stamped in the metadata. Second image, the same truck at a different location. More coordinates. Third image, a man in an expensive suit standing beside the truck, face partially visible. And on his right hand, clearly visible, even in the low light, a distinctive turquoise ring set in silver. Sloane stared at the image. That's Roth. That's definitely Sheriff Clayton Roth. Bryn opened more files, bank records, wire transfers, amounts in the hundreds of thousands, accounts in the Cayman Islands, names that meant nothing to Declan but clearly meant something to the two detectives. This isn't just trafficking, Bryn said, voice tight. This is organized, multi-state, federal-level corruption. She opened a document, a list. 12 names, 12 women, ages ranging from 19 to 34, dates of disappearance, last known locations. Bryn's hand moved to one name. Stop there. Lila Haskell. Sloane looked at her. Your sister. Bryn nodded, unable to speak. Her younger sister, missing 18 months. The reason Bryn had become a cop. The reason she could not let this case go. Seeing the name in black and white, part of an official list, made it real in a way Hope had denied. We're sending this, Declan said. Right now, multiple recipients, FBI, state police, U.S. Marshals. Press if we have to. If we send it now, we lose our leverage, Sloane said. They'll know we copied it. They'll have no reason to keep us alive. They already have no reason to keep us alive. At least this way the truth gets out. Sloane considered, then nodded. Do it. Bryn began composing an email. Subject line urgent. Evidence of federal trafficking operation. She attached every file from the memory card, typed a brief explanation, added the GPS coordinates of their current location. Her fingers paused over the keyboard. Who do we send it to? We can't trust local FBI. Vaughn's their contact. She might have more reach. Declan pulled out his own satellite phone. I've got one contact. Cassidy Thorne, U.S. Marshal, former SEAL teammate. If anyone can be trusted, it's her. He dictated the email address. Bryn added it to the recipient list, then added 3 more. Major news outlets. Redundancy. Her finger hovered over the send button. Once this goes, she said, everything changes. We can't take it back. Good, Sloane said. Let it change. Bryn clicked send. The progress bar crawled across the screen. Satellite internet was glacially slow. 40%, 50%. The cabin's walls felt thinner suddenly, more fragile. Outside the radio Declan had taken from Jace crackled to life. All units, new orders. Cabin is to be destroyed. Total loss. No survivors. Burn it down and bug out. Helicopter, ETA 20 minutes. Sloane's eyes met Declan's. They had maybe 20 minutes before fire consumed everything. 70% uploaded, 80%. Timber's ears swiveled toward the back of the cabin. A new sound, not gunfire, something else. Declan moved to the rear window, looked out carefully. Dark shapes approaching from the west, carrying something bulky. Fuel cans. They were going to burn them out. 90%, 95%. Come on, Bryn whispered to the computer. Come on. 100%. Message sent. Declan was already moving, grabbing the essential gear bag he kept packed for emergencies. Escape tunnel. Now, we've got maybe 2 minutes before they light this place up. He pulled back a heavy rug near the north wall, revealing a trapdoor. Yanked it open. Darkness below. Ladies first. Move. Sloane went without argument, dropping into the tunnel despite her injuries. Bryn followed, then Timber, who jumped down without hesitation. Declan grabbed Jace by the vest, pulled him upright. You're coming too. Try anything, I'll leave you for the fire. Jace did not resist. Whatever loyalty he had felt toward his employers had evaporated when they ordered the cabin burned with him still inside. Declan shoved him toward the tunnel opening. Jump! Jace dropped into darkness. Declan followed, pulling the trapdoor shut above them. The tunnel was narrow, 4 feet high, reinforced with timber supports. Declan had dug it himself over the course of 6 months. an escape route that opened a quarter-mile north, hidden in a natural ravine. They moved in single file, Sloane leading despite her injuries driven by pure determination. Bryn behind her, Timber next, his large frame barely fitting. Jace hands still zip-tied. Declan bringing up the rear. The tunnel sloped downward, water pooling in low spots. The ceiling dripped. The air was close and cold, but not freezing. Earth insulation kept it a few degrees above the outside temperature. Behind them, muffled but unmistakable, the sound of breaking glass, liquid sloshing. Then the whoosh of igniting gasoline. The cabin was burning. 5 years of isolation. 5 years of careful preparation. 5 years of convincing himself that distance equaled safety. All of it going up in flames. Declan felt nothing about the loss, just kept moving forward, one hand on Timber's hindquarters while guiding the dog through the tight space. They emerged 10 minutes later in the ravine, snow immediately coating them, wind stealing the warmth they had retained. Sloane pulled herself out, first collapsed against a snowbank, breathing hard. Bryn followed, then helped Declan pull Timber up. The dog shook snow from his coat, immediately alert again. Jace came last. Declan kept his pistol trained on him throughout. "Where now?" Bryn asked, teeth chattering, despite the thermal layers. Declan pointed north. "Secondary cache, half a mile, shelter supplies, communications." "Can we make it?" He looked at Sloane. She could barely stand. Looked at Bryn, still recovering from hypothermia. Looked at Timber, who was strong but not invincible. "We don't have a choice." Behind them, orange light flickered through the trees. The cabin was fully engulfed now, smoke rising into the storm, dispersing quickly. The radio Declan had kept crackled. "Cabin neutralized. Confirm 4 bodies inside." A pause, then another voice. "Unable to confirm. Fire too intense. Check the perimeter. Make sure no one got out." Declan switched off the radio. They would be searching soon, looking for tracks in the snow. "Move," he said quietly. "Stay close. Step where I step." They moved north through the ravine, using the natural depression to hide their profile. Timber ranged slightly ahead, testing each step, choosing the path of least resistance. Sloane stumbled, caught herself on a tree, kept moving. Her face was drawn tight with pain, but her jaw was set. Whatever strength she had left, she was using it. Bryn was in better condition physically, but emotionally the weight was showing. Every few minutes she would look back, as if expecting to see flames following them, or maybe looking for her sister in the darkness. Lila's name on that list. Jace moved without complaint, hands still bound. He had not spoken since leaving the tunnel, just followed orders. Survival instinct overriding everything else. The secondary cache was exactly where Declan had left it 3 years ago. A small dugout shelter built into the side of a hill, camouflaged with natural materials and reinforced against weather. Big enough for 4 people if they did not mind close quarters. Inside, emergency supplies. Sleeping bags, MREs, first aid, and most importantly, a backup satellite phone and radio. Declan got them settled, distributed sleeping bags, fired up a small camping stove for heat. Not much, but enough to keep hypothermia at bay. Sloane sat against this wall, eyes closed, breathing carefully. Every breath seemed to cost her. Bryn checked the first aid kit, found antibiotics, handed them to Sloane. "For your frostbite, prevent infection." Sloane took them without argument, swallowed them dry. Declan powered up the satellite phone. It took a minute to acquire signal through the storm. Then finally connection established. He dialed the number he had memorized years ago, the one he swore he would never use unless absolutely necessary. It rang 4 times. Then a voice answered. Female, professional, cautious. "Thorne. Cassidy, it's Declan Rourke." A pause, long enough to confirm she recognized the name. "Rourke, it's been, what, 5 years?" "About that. You finally ready to rejoin civilization?" "Not exactly. I need help, federal level, and I need it fast." The tone of her voice changed, all business now. "What's the situation?" Declan laid it out in concise terms. The 2 detectives, the trafficking evidence, the sheriff and lieutenant running the operation, the attack on his cabin, the men still hunting them. Cassidy listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "You're telling me a county sheriff is running a multi-state trafficking ring with federal protection?" "That's what the evidence shows. We sent you files 20 minutes ago. Check your secure email." He heard typing on her end, a pause. More typing. "Got it. Opening now." Another pause, longer this time. "Jesus Christ," Cassidy said quietly. "This is real. This is all real. Can you help?" "I can do better than help. I can bring in the full weight of the U.S. Marshal Service. But I need coordinates. Where are you right now? Declan gave her their location, GPS down to 6 decimal places. Okay, I've got assets in the region. Helicopter can be airborne in 30 minutes. But the weather up there is bad. They might not be able to fly until it clears. How long? Forecast says the storm breaks around dawn, 6 hours from now. 6 hours. Declan looked at Sloan at Bryn, looked at Timber already curling up near the stove for warmth. We can hold 6 hours. What about the hostiles still active? 6 of them, armed, professional. They know we're out here somewhere. They'll be hunting. Can you evade until dawn? We'll have to. Cassidy's voice softened slightly. Declan, don't do anything stupid. You've got civilians with you. Your job is to keep them alive, not engage. Understood. I mean it. You've got nothing to prove. Just survive until we get there. Copy that. He ended the call, looked at the 3 people and 1 dog sharing this tiny shelter with him, all of them depending on him to make the right calls. Sloan had her eyes open now watching him. 6 hours. Give or take. They'll find us before then. Maybe. Definitely. She shifted, wincing at the movement. They know this terrain. They've got thermal imaging. We're leaving tracks in the snow. Declan did not disagree. She was right. Survival was not about hiding anymore. It was about staying mobile, staying unpredictable. Then we don't stay here, he said. We move every 90 minutes. Keep them guessing. Make them work for it. Bryn looked up from where she was tending to Timber's paws, checking for ice buildup between his toes. We can barely walk. How are we supposed to keep moving for 6 hours? 1 step at a time, 1 minute at a time, the same way we've survived everything else tonight. Sloan met his eyes across the small space. Why are you doing this? You could have left us out there, could have stayed out of it. This isn't your fight. Declan was quiet for a long moment, thinking about the men he had lost, the guilt he had carried, the isolation he had chosen. 5 years ago, he said finally, I gave an order that got 2 of my men killed. I told myself I would never be responsible for lives again. That distance was safety. But tonight, when Timber found you out there, he paused. I realized running doesn't erase the debt. It just compounds it. Sloan nodded slowly, understanding without needing more words. Outside, the storm continued its assault. Wind howling, snow falling, and somewhere in that darkness, 6 men were hunting them. But for the first time since finding those 2 women hanging from a tree, Declan felt something that had been absent for 5 years. Purpose. Not redemption. Not yet. Maybe never. But purpose was enough. Timber raised his head, suddenly ears forward. Alert. Voices in the distance. Faint but getting closer. They're sweeping the area, Declan said, killing the stove, plunging them into darkness. Everyone quiet, don't move. The voices grew louder. 2 men, maybe 3, moving methodically through the trees. In the darkness of the shelter, 4 people and 1 dog held their breath and waited to see if the next 6 hours would be about survival or something much worse. The voices passed within 30 yards of the shelter. Declan held perfectly still in the darkness, 1 hand on Timber's collar, feeling the dog's muscles coiled and ready beneath thick fur. The German shepherd understood silence the way most animals understood breathing. He did not growl, did not shift, simply waited with the patience of a creature who had learned that survival often meant doing nothing at all. Sloan and Bryn were equally motionless, years of police training overriding every instinct to move, to prepare, to do something other than sit in the dark while armed men hunted them. Jay's hands still zip-tied pressed himself against the earthen wall. Whatever loyalty he had felt toward his former teammates had evaporated completely. Now he was just another person trying not to die. The searchers moved past their voices, fading into the storm. Declan waited another 5 minutes before allowing himself to exhale fully. They'll be back, Sloan whispered. That was just the first sweep. Which is why we move now. Declan checked his watch. The luminous hands showed 0247 hours. Dawn was still 4 hours away. 4 hours until the marshals could fly. 4 hours of staying ahead of professional hunters in hostile terrain. He distributed what supplies they could carry. MRES stuffed into pockets. Emergency blankets, the satellite phone, extra ammunition for the weapons they had salvaged from the cabin. Bryn helped Sloan to her feet. The detective's face was drawn with pain, her frostbitten fingers clumsy despite the warming they had received. But she moved without a complaint, jaw set with determination that spoke of will overriding physical limitation. They emerged from the shelter into the full fury of the storm. Wind had picked up, driving snow horizontally now. Visibility was less than 10 feet. Brutal conditions for travel, but also brutal conditions for tracking. Declan led them northeast away from the cabin site, away from the most obvious escape routes. He chose terrain that punished them, but would punish pursuers equally. Rocky ground where snow did not accumulate as deeply, stream beds where water erased tracks, ridgelines where wind scoured the earth clean. Timber moved ahead, testing each step, choosing paths that balanced speed with concealment. At 6 years old, he no longer had the endurance of his prime, but experience taught him how to conserve energy, how to move efficiently through hostile terrain. They walked for 90 minutes. No one spoke. Speech required breath they could not spare. Every calorie mattered now, every degree of body heat. Declan called a halt in a natural depression surrounded by dense evergreens. The trees broke the wind, slightly creating a pocket of relative calm. They huddled together for warmth, sharing body heat without ceremony. Sloane's breathing had become labored, each inhalation sharp and pained. Declan recognized the signs. Cracked rib from the hanging had worsened with exertion, possibly puncturing lung tissue. "Let me see," he said quietly. Sloane shook her head. "I can manage." That wasn't a request, detective. She met his eyes, saw something there that made her acquiesce. She opened her coat enough for Declan to examine her torso. Even through her shirt that he could see the discoloration. Dark bruising spreading across her right side. He pressed gently. Sloane hissed in pain, but did not pull away. "Ribs definitely broken. Possibly two. The way you're breathing, there's at least some fluid in your lung." He met her eyes. "You need a hospital, soon." "Well, that's not happening for 4 hours, so I guess I keep breathing until then." Bryn pulled out the first aid kit, found the strongest painkillers available, handed them to Sloane with water from a canteen that was already half frozen. Sloane swallowed the pills. "How much longer can we keep moving?" Declan checked his watch again. 0427 hours. 3.5 hours until the marshals can fly, but the storm's supposed to break around dawn. Once visibility improves, thermal imaging becomes more effective. So our best cover disappears right when we need it most. That's about the size of it. Timber suddenly tensed, nose lifting to test the air. He turned to face south, a low rumble building in his chest. Declan held up a hand for silence. Listened past the wind. There, the distant thrum of an engine. Not ground vehicles. Something else. "Helicopter," Bryn said, recognizing the sound. "Their extraction bird. They called it in early." Declan's mind raced through implications. Means they're either confident they'll find us soon, or they're cutting their losses and bugging out. The sound grew louder, rotors chopping through the storm. Searchlights suddenly blazed through the snow, brilliant and blinding. The helicopter was directly overhead now, maybe 200 feet up. Spotlights sweeping the ground in systematic patterns. "Don't move," Declan hissed. "Thermal won't see us through the tree cover if we stay still." The spotlight passed over their position, moved on, came back. The helicopter hovered, rotors creating a downdraft that sent snow swirling in chaotic patterns. For 30 seconds, that felt like 30 minutes, the aircraft held position. Then it banked sharply and moved north, searchlight, probing the forest in a new grid pattern. "They're not extracting," Sloane said. "They're hunting. And they've got aerial superiority." Declan cursed quietly. "We need to get under better cover, somewhere thermal imaging can't penetrate." Bryn pulled out the memory card they had risked everything to preserve. Studied it in the dim light. "The mining complex, the one in the photos. It's not far from here, maybe 2 miles northeast." "Underground structures," Declan said, seeing where she was going. "Natural thermal camouflage. But it's also their base of operations. Walking into it would be suicide." "Would it, Declan looked at Jace. "You were part of the security. What's the current operational status of that facility?" Jace hesitated, then seemed to calculate that cooperation was his best chance at survival. "Last I heard, they were moving the shipment out tonight. Route 9 crossing. Everything was supposed to be cleared by 0600. So the complex might be empty. Might be, or might have a skeleton crew. I don't know. I was perimeter security, not logistics." Sloane and Bryn exchanged glances, the same thought passing between them. The mining complex was not just thermal cover. It was where the evidence was, where the victims might still be. "We go there," Sloane said. "Not just to hide, to finish this." "You can barely walk," Declan said flatly. "You've got a punctured lung and frostbite. This isn't the time for heroics." "My sister is in one of those shipping containers," Bryn said, voice tight. "Lila. 18 months I've been looking for her. We're 2 miles away. I'm not running when I'm this close." Declan wanted to argue. wanted to tell them the mission was survival, not rescue, that getting themselves killed would not save anyone. But he looked at their faces and saw something he recognized from his own mirror 5 years ago. The desperate need to do something that mattered, to transform helplessness into action, to choose purpose over safety. If we do this, he said slowly, we do it smart. We're not walking in blind. We observe first. Confirm it's clear, or confirm we need to wait for the marshals. Bryn nodded. Agreed. They moved out again, heading northeast now, with renewed purpose. The terrain grew rougher. Old logging roads appeared and disappeared beneath the snow. Evidence of human activity decades old reclaimed by the forest. The helicopter passed overhead, twice more searchlight probing. Each time they froze, relying on the dense canopy and falling snow to mask their thermal signature. Each time it moved on without spotting them. Timber began favoring his left hind leg slightly. The cold was affecting him too. Declan called a brief halt, checked the dog's paws for ice buildup, found chunks packed between his toes. He cleared them carefully, feeling Timber's muscles tremble with fatigue. How much farther? Sloane asked. Her voice had weakened noticeably. Half a mile, maybe less. Declan offered her water. She drank sparingly. You still with us? Until I'm not. They covered the last distance slowly. The mining complex emerged from the storm like a ghost of industrial ambition. Old structures sagging under years of neglect. Rusted equipment half buried in snow. And newer additions. Lights strung between buildings. Fresh tire tracks. The infrastructure of an operation trying to hide in plain sight. Declan found an observation point on a ridge overlooking the complex. They settled into position using binoculars to survey the layout. 3 large shipping containers positioned near what looked like the main mine entrance. 2 trucks parked beside them. Lights on in a temporary structure that might be an office or barracks. I count 2 guards, Bryn whispered, both near the office. Could be more inside the containers or the mine itself. Declan scanned methodically. This feels wrong, too quiet for an active operation. As if confirming his suspicion, one of the guards answered a radio call. Even at this distance, Declan could hear the tinny voice through the cold air. Final extraction confirmed. Route 9 clear. Move the shipment now. The guards moved with sudden urgency, opened the first shipping container. Even from 100 yards away, Declan could see figures moving inside. People, women, being herded out at gunpoint. Bryn's hand tightened on her binoculars. That's them. That's the victims. Sloane counted quietly. I see 9, no 10, all female, young. One woman stumbled as she climbed down from the container. A guard grabbed her arm roughly, shoved her toward the truck. She fell in the snow, did not get up fast enough. The guard raised his hand to strike her. Timber growled low in his chest, a sound of pure aggression. Declan's finger moved to his rifle's trigger guard, not aiming yet, but ready. The guard did not strike. Another voice called out, ordering them to move faster. The woman was pulled to her feet, pushed toward the truck with the others. We can't just watch this, Bryn said. We have to do something. Against how many hostiles, with what backup? Declan kept his voice level. We wait for the marshals, 3 hours. In 3 hours, those women will be across the Canadian border. Gone. We'll never find them again. In 3 hours, we'll have federal support, proper resources, the ability to actually save them instead of getting everyone killed in a poorly planned assault. Sloane shifted position, wincing. He's right, Bryn. We can't help them if we're dead. But Bryn was not listening anymore. She was staring through the binoculars at one particular woman being loaded into the truck, younger than the others. Dark hair, familiar features even at this distance. That's Lila, Bryn whispered. That's my sister. Sloane took the binoculars, looked. Her face tightened. Bryn, don't tell me to wait. Don't tell me to be smart. That's my baby sister. I've been looking for her for 18 months. She's right there. Declan understood the impulse, the desperate need to act, but he also understood mathematics. 2 guards visible, unknown number inside. 4 people, one seriously injured, one with his hands tied, 1 dog against professional security in their own facility. The math was bad, but before he could say anything, the situation changed. Lights swept across the access road, a convoy approaching. 4 vehicles, official markings barely visible through the snow. Sheriff's Department, State Police. That's Roth, Sloane said, recognizing the lead vehicle. He's here personally. The convoy pulled into the complex. Doors opened. Sheriff Clayton Roth stepped out, distinctive turquoise ring, visible even at this distance as he gestured orders. With him, a woman in a state police uniform, Lieutenant Iris Vaughn, And behind them a third figure, older, wearing a suit despite the weather, moving with the confidence of someone accustomed to authority. "Who's that?" Bryn asked. Jace, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "That's the senator, the one mentioned on the radio. I've only seen him once before, but that's him." The pieces clicked into place. This was not just local corruption, not just state-level facilitation. This went to the federal government, a senator directly involved in trafficking operations. Roth approached the guards, spoke briefly. One of them pointed toward the ridge, toward where Declan and his group were hidden. They had been spotted, or someone had reported their location. "We need to move," Declan said. "Now." But before they could retreat, the radio on Jace's vest crackled to life, the one Declan had forgotten to disable. Roth's voice came through clearly. "Kowalski, I know you're out there, I know you've turned, but you've still got a chance to make this right. Bring me those 2 cops in the SEAL. Do that, and you walk away clean. Stay with them, and you burn with them." Jace looked at Declan, at the women, at the rifle pointed casually in his direction. "Don't even think about it," Declan said quietly. "I'm not." Jace's voice was steady. Whatever I thought this job was, that ends when senators start showing up to supervise human trafficking. "I'm done." Sloan reached over and cut his zip ties with a knife. "Then help us. What's the facility layout?" Jace rubbed his wrist, grateful and surprised. Main mine entrance leads to 3 tunnels. The containers are temporary holding. They move people through the tunnels to the Canadian side, 3 miles underground, comes out in an abandoned quarry across the border. Security, usually 8 guards total, shifts of 4, but with the final extraction happening, probably all 8 are here now. The math was still bad, but it was less bad than it had been. Declan made a decision he knew might be his last. "We're not waiting for the marshals. Those women get moved in the next 30 minutes, we lose them forever." Sloane's head snapped up. "I thought you said we needed to be smart." "I also said I was done running from responsibility. So we're going to do something really stupid. And with luck, we'll survive it." He laid out the plan quickly. It was not complicated because complicated plans required resources they did not have. It was desperate and dangerous and relied on timing that had to be perfect. "This is insane," Bryn said when he finished. "Completely," Sloan agreed. "I'm in," Bryn said. "Me too," Sloan confirmed. Jace nodded. "I've got nothing left to lose. Let's end this." Declan looked at Timber. The dog met his gaze with amber eyes that had seen too many operations just like this. Desperate, dangerous, necessary. "One more time, boy, then we're done, I promise." Timber's tail moved once. Not enthusiasm, just acknowledgement. They moved down from the ridge in the pre-dawn darkness. The storm was finally breaking snow, tapering off visibility, improving by the minute. It would make them easier to spot, but it would also make their targets easier to hit. Declan positioned Sloan with the rifle on an overlook that gave her clear sight lines to the compound. "You're our overwatch. Anyone moves on the women, you take them down." "My hands are still shaking from frostbite. I might not be accurate." "Then aim for center mass and pray." He sent Bryn and Jace to the east side where they could create a diversion. Loud, obvious, make them think you're the main assault. "What are you doing?" Bryn asked. "What I do best. Going where I'm not supposed to be." He moved toward the mine entrance with only Timber beside him, using the pre-dawn darkness and the last of the snow for cover. Moving with the practiced silence of someone who had infiltrated hostile territory more times than he could count. The guards were focused on loading the women, on Roth and Vaughn and the senator having an animated discussion near the office. On the radio traffic, reporting that the helicopter had spotted something on the North Ridge. No one was watching the mine entrance. Declan slipped inside with Timber at his heel. The darkness was absolute. He switched on a red-filtered flashlight that preserved night vision. The tunnel descended sharply, shored up with ancient timbers that groaned under the weight of earth above. Voices echoed from deeper in, at least 2 people, maybe more. Declan moved toward the sound, Timber ghosting along beside him. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber. Emergency lighting strung along the walls, and in the center, 11 women huddled together. Guards stood watch, 3 of them, armed with rifles. The math was getting worse again. Outside, Bryn and Jace initiated their diversion right on schedule. Gunfire erupted, shouts. The guards in the chamber immediately tensed, 2 of them moving toward the tunnel entrance, leaving one behind with the prisoners. Declan waited until the 2 guards had passed his position. Then he moved. Silent, fast. The last guard never saw him coming. A controlled strike to the carotid artery. The guard dropped without a sound. The women stared at Declan in shock and fear. He held up one hand in a calming gesture. U.S. military, you're being rescued. Stay quiet and stay together. One woman younger than the others with dark hair and features that matched Bryn's stepped forward. Are you real? Please tell me you're real. I'm real. Is your name Lila? She nodded, tears starting. Your sister sent me. She's outside. We're getting you all out of here. The words broke something in Lila. She collapsed to her knees, sobbing. The other women gathered around her, supporting her, their own tears flowing now. Declan keyed his radio. Package secured, 11 souls. Need extraction immediately. Sloane's voice came back. North entrance clear. Bring them out. But before Declan could move, Timber growled. The two guards were returning, having realized the diversion was just that, a diversion. Get behind me, Declan ordered the women. Stay down. The guards came through the tunnel entrance firing. Declan returned fire, dropping one immediately. The second ducked back into cover. Stalemate. Declan could not advance without exposing the women. The guard could not advance without exposing himself. Then Timber moved, without command, without hesitation. The German shepherd launched himself past Declan straight at the guard's position. The guard swung his rifle toward the dog, fired. The shot went wide. Timber hit him at full speed. 80 pounds of trained aggression. Jaws clamping down on the guard's firing arm. The rifle clattered away. Declan was moving before the weapon hit the ground. Close the distance. Put the guard down permanently. Timber released, stepped back. Blood on his muzzle. A new wound on his left hind leg where a bullet had grazed him. Timber heel. The dog limped back to Declan's side. Bleeding. Exhausted. But mission complete. Move, Declan told the women. North tunnel. Fast as you can. They ran, frightened but desperate. Declan brought up the rear with Timber covering their retreat. They emerged from the mine to chaos. The diversion had worked too well. The entire security force was engaged with Bryn and Jace's position. Roth was shouting orders. Vaughn was coordinating on the radio. The senator had retreated to his vehicle. And from the south, the beautiful sound of helicopter rotors. But not the extraction bird. Federal markings, U.S. Marshals. Cassidy Thorne had arrived early. The helicopter settled into a landing zone 50 yards from the complex. Doors opened. Federal agents poured out. Armed, armored, moving with overwhelming force. Roth saw them and went for his sidearm. Sloane, from her overwatch position, put a round into the ground at his feet. He froze. U.S. Marshals, Cassidy's voice boomed through a megaphone. Everyone on the ground now. The security guards, recognizing federal authority and overwhelming numbers, complied immediately. Weapons down, hands up. Vaughn tried to run, made it 10 steps before a marshal tackled her. The senator stood frozen beside his vehicle, face pale, calculating odds that had suddenly turned catastrophically against him. Declan guided the women toward the marshal's Timber, limping beside him. Medics rushed forward, began triage. Bryn appeared from the east position, running toward the group of rescued women. Lila! The sisters collided in an embrace that spoke of 18 months of anguish finally ending. Both of them crying, both of them holding on like they would never let go. Sloane descended from her position, moving slowly but steadily. She walked directly to Sheriff Roth, stood in front of the man who had trained her, mentored her, betrayed her. You're under arrest, she said quietly, for human trafficking, for attempted murder of police officers, for corruption, and for making me doubt everything I believed about duty. Roth said nothing, just stared at her with empty eyes. Cassidy Thorne approached Declan, taking in his appearance. Wet, exhausted. Blood on his clothes that might or might not be his own. Rourke, you look like hell. Feel worse, but we got them all. So I see. She glanced at the women being loaded into the helicopter, at Timber receiving attention from a veterinary medic, at Bryn and Lila still holding each other. When you call for help, you don't do anything small, do you? Learned it from the best. Cassidy's expression softened slightly. For what it's worth, you did good work here tonight. Saved a lot of lives. Just finished what these two detectives started. Declan nodded towards Sloane and Bryn. They're the ones who wouldn't let it go. The sun was rising now, breaking through the departing storm clouds. First light painting the snow gold and pink, beautiful despite everything. Medical personnel approached, insisting on examining everyone. Sloane was loaded onto a stretcher. Despite her protests, rushed toward the helicopter for immediate transport. Her lung had partially collapsed. She needed surgery. Bryn refused to leave Lila's side. The marshals allowed it, loading them both onto the same transport. Jace surrendered himself voluntarily to Cassidy, providing names, contacts, everything he knew about the operation, buying himself consideration through cooperation. Timber received treatment for his leg wound. The bullet had only grazed muscle. He would heal. But the veterinary medic recommended rest and monitoring, as if rest was something Timber understood. Declan sat on a fallen log watching federal agents secure the crime scene, watching justice finally arrive in the form of handcuffs and evidence bags and procedures that would dismantle an 8-year operation. Cassidy sat beside him. We found the server, records going back almost a decade, wire transfers, routes, manifests, and a list of buyers that's going to shake foundations when it goes public. How many victims total? 53 women we can confirm. Probably more. We're cross-referencing missing persons reports across 4 states. 53. The number settled heavy in Declan's chest. The senator? Lawyered up immediately. But with the evidence we have, he's done. Career over. Criminal charges pending. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison if the DOJ does its job. And if they don't, then I'll make sure the evidence leaks to every news outlet in the country. Cassidy's voice hardened. One way or another, there will be accountability. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the sun climb higher, watching the nightmare of the last 12 hours transform into the procedural machinery of justice. What are you going to do now? Cassidy asked. The cabin's gone. You can't go back there. Declan had been thinking about that. The cabin had been his refuge, his isolation, his attempt to escape responsibility. It had also been a lie. I don't know, he said honestly. Haven't thought that far ahead. Well, when you figure it out, the Marshal Service could use someone with your skill set, tactical consultant, training role. Nothing frontline if you don't want it, but we could use you. I'll think about it. Do that. Cassidy stood, extended her hand. And Rourke, thank you for not walking away when you could have, for doing the hard thing. Declan shook her hand, felt the weight of recognition, of being seen not for what he had run from, but for what he had chosen to do. The helicopter lifted off with Sloan and Bryn and the rescued women. Another transport was inbound for evidence and prisoners. Timber limped over, settled beside Declan with a heavy sigh. Mission complete. Body demanding rest that had been denied for too long. Declan rested his hand on the dog's head. We did it, boy. We actually did it. Timber's tail thumped once against the snow. 6 months later, Declan stood in a federal courthouse in Portland, Maine, watching the sentencing phase of United States versus Roth. Sheriff Clayton Roth received 45 years without possibility of parole. Lieutenant Iris Vaughn received 38 years. The senator whose name had dominated headlines for months received life imprisonment. 17 other officers across 4 states had been arrested. 11 had already been convicted. The remaining trials were pending. The Northern Border Trafficking Task Force had been established with federal funding and multi-state jurisdiction. Sloan Mercer had been promoted to lead the investigation unit. Bryn Haskell served as specialist in data analysis and victim coordination. They had recovered 64 victims total, 19 from secondary locations, 45 from the extensive records that had been preserved. Not everyone had survived. Some had been moved before raids could be executed. Some had been killed to eliminate witnesses. The task force was still searching, but 64 was 64. 64 lives returned, 64 families reunited, 64 reasons to keep fighting. Declan had accepted Cassidy's offer, tactical consultant for the U.S. Marshal Service. Training role, teaching younger agents how to survive hostile situations, how to make hard calls under pressure, how to live with the consequences. He had bought a small house outside Portland, nothing fancy, but with room for Timber, room for the occasional visitor, room for a life that did not depend on isolation. Sloan visited sometimes. She had recovered fully from her injuries, though her hands still showed faint scarring from the frostbite. She never talked about the night in the blizzard. Did not need to. Some experiences lived in silence more honestly than in words. Bryn came by less frequently, but always with Lila. The younger sister was in therapy rebuilding a life that had been stolen. It was slow work, painful work. But she was trying. That was all anyone could do. Try. Timber had healed completely. His legs showed only a slight stiffness in cold weather. He had been formally retired from any official duties, but he still accompanied Declan everywhere. Still positioned himself between Declan and potential threats. Still sensed danger before it had a name. Some habits were permanent. On a cold November evening, Declan drove north with Timber in the passenger seat. Back toward the land where it had all happened. The cabin site was still there, foundation exposed, charred timbers scattered by wind and weather. He had not planned to rebuild, had not planned to return at all. But standing there in the gathering darkness, looking at the ruins of his isolation, he felt something shift. The past did not own him anymore. The guilt he had carried for 5 years had not disappeared, would never disappear completely, but it had transformed into something else. Not redemption. That was too clean, too final, but purpose, direction. The understanding that running from responsibility was its own kind of failure. He thought about the two detectives hanging from that tree, about Timber finding them in the storm, about the choice he had made to stay when every instinct screamed to run. That choice had saved lives, had dismantled an operation that had stolen years from dozens of women, had brought accountability to people who thought themselves untouchable. One choice, one moment, one refusal to look away. It had changed everything. Timber pressed against his legs, solid and warm. The dog looked up at him with amber eyes that had seen the worst of humanity and still chose to protect it. "We're not coming back here," Declan said quietly. "This part's over." Timber's tail moved once. Agreement or understanding? Hard to say. They drove back toward Portland as darkness fell. The forest gave way to towns. Towns gave way to the city, lights burning against the cold. Declan thought about Sloan leading the task force with the same determination that had kept her alive through hypothermia and gunfire. About Bryn using her pain to fuel justice for others who had suffered. About Lila fighting every day to reclaim herself. About the 64 women who had been given their lives back. Not saved, that was too simple, too clean. But given a chance, given hope, given the space to rebuild what had been broken. Sometimes that was all heroism could offer. Not rescue from every darkness, but presence in the darkness. The refusal to let people die alone in the cold. At home, Declan let Timber out into the small fenced yard. The dog moved through his familiar territory, checking perimeter, ensuring safety, then settled on the porch, watching the street with patient vigilance. Inside, Declan made coffee, sat at the kitchen table with files from the next training session he was scheduled to teach. Young marshals who needed to understand that survival was not about never being afraid. It was about functioning through fear, about making hard calls when every option felt wrong. His phone buzzed, a text from Sloan. "Update: 2 more victims recovered in Vermont. Total now 66. Task force expanding. This fight continues." Declan texted back. "Good work. Stay safe." Her response came immediately. "Always. You taught me that." He set the phone down, looked out the window at Timber keeping watch. 5 years he had lived in isolation, believing distance equaled peace, believing that if he never led anyone again, he could never fail them. The blizzard had proven him wrong. Peace was not found in distance. It was found in purpose. In choosing to stay when staying was hard. In refusing to look away when looking away was easier. The mission continued. It would always continue. Evil did not end because good people fought back once. It required constant vigilance, constant choice, constant willingness to step into the cold when others needed warmth. But that was okay, because Declan Rourke was no longer running. He was standing his ground, and that made all the difference. Outside, the first snow of the new winter began to fall, soft and quiet, beautiful despite everything. Timber lifted his head, watched the flakes accumulate on the ground, then settled back into patient observation, ready for whatever came next. Together, the man and the dog, who had found 2 dying women in a blizzard, waited for morning, for the next call, for the next moment when choice would matter more than fear. And in that waiting, they found what 5 years of isolation had never provided. Not redemption, not peace, but something simpler and more valuable. Purpose, the kind worth living for, the kind worth fighting for, the kind that meant when the storm came again, and it always came again, they would not run. They would face it together until the very end.